There are moments in life when time seems to stop. For me, that moment came in the most ordinary of places, a doctor's office I had visited hundreds of times before. I never imagined that routine visit would turn into the day I stopped trusting the very walls of my own home. It started like every other checkup. The waiting room smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee from the machine near the front desk. I flipped through an old issue of Southern Living, half reading a recipe for pecan pie, half glancing up at the Christmas garland taped along the counter. Outside, Baltimore's December wind rattled the glass. I was bundled up in my navy wool coat, scarf tucked in, just wanting to get this appointment over with so I could stop at Lexington Market and pick up a container of crab soup on the way home. When the nurse finally called my name, Ms. Ellison, I gathered my purse and followed her back. Same narrow hallway. Same exam room with the laminated chart of the human body taped to the wall. It felt routine, comfortably predictable. And then Dr. Priya Klein walked in. She'd been my doctor for nearly 15 years. I trusted her in ways I didn't trust anyone else, not even most of my family. She had seen me through my husband's passing, my blood pressure scares, my knee replacement. She was steady, professional, never flustered. But that day, she looked off. Her white coat was crisp as always, her hair neatly tied back, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the blood pressure cuff around my arm. She avoided eye contact, glancing at the door more than once. My pulse quickened before she even said a word. Blood pressure looks great. Naomi, she said, voice a little too bright. Cholesterol is steady, heart strong. You're healthier than most people 10 years younger. It should have been comforting. But instead, it felt rehearsed, like she was trying to convince someone listening through the door. Not me. She wrapped up the exam quickly, more quickly than usual. Then, as I reached for my purse sitting on the chair, she leaned closer. In a motion so smooth I might have missed it if I hadn't been looking, she slid a folded piece of paper into the side pocket of my bag. Our eyes met, just for a heartbeat. And in that glance, I saw fear, not hers for herself, but for me. She straightened up, plastered on a smile, and said louder than usual, "Take good care of yourself, Naomi. And remember, family isn't always what it seems." Her words cut sharper than the December wind outside. I walked out of that office in a daze, the sound of my sensible flats echoing against the tile hallway. The receptionist wished me happy holidays. I nodded without a word. My mind was already somewhere else, racing. Outside. I hailed a cab. The driver, a young man in a Ravens beanie, leaned over. "Where to?" "Ma'am." I slid into the back seat and finally opened my purse. My fingers found the paper, edges still warm from her hand. I unfolded it. 4 words, written in hurried, block letters. "Don't go home. Run." I stared at it until the words blurred. My throat went dry. The driver asked again. "Where are you headed?" I should have said home. That's what you always say. Home is safety. Home is comfort. But now, staring at those 4 words, home suddenly felt like a trap. "Take me downtown," I blurted. My voice cracked. "Pratt Street." He shrugged, pulled into traffic, and I pressed the note against my knee until it crumpled. As the row houses blurred past, my thoughts went straight to who was waiting at home. Darren, my nephew I had raised like a son after my sister passed, Kara, his wife, who filled the house with scented candles and Instagram posts about family life, and their little boy who had taken over my living room with his toy trucks. Why would Dr. Klein tell me not to go home to them? I tried to make excuses. Maybe the note wasn't meant for me. Maybe she slipped it in by mistake. But I kept remembering her eyes, the silent plea, the urgency. No, it was meant for me. And then her last words echoed. "Family isn't always what it seems." My stomach churned. I thought of Darren's evasive smile at breakfast, Kara's whispered phone calls at midnight, the stack of unopened envelopes Darren always grabbed from the counter before I could glance at them. Were those really little quirks, or were they red flags I had ignored? I pressed my forehead to the cool cab window, trying to steady my breathing. Tourists bustled along the inner harbor, shopping bags swinging, children pointing at the tall Christmas tree near the water. I felt like I was watching the world through glass, everyone else busy, normal, and me caught in some invisible storm. When the cab stopped on Pratt Street, I paid cash. Barely noticing the driver's polite happy holidays, I stepped onto the sidewalk, clutching my purse like it was a life raft. Who do you call when your doctor tells you not to go home? Do you call your family? The very people who might be the danger, do you call your pastor? Your best friend? The police? I scrolled through my contacts, thumb hovering over each name. I couldn't bring myself to press one. I looked up. The holiday lights shimmered across the harbor, reflected in the dark water, and I made a decision. I wasn't going home, not tonight, not until I knew exactly why Dr. Klein had risked her career, maybe even her safety, to warn me. Because if she was right, if home wasn't safe anymore, then everything I thought I knew about family, about loyalty, about love, was about to be shattered. Cliffhanger. What exactly did Dr. Klein discover, and what secret could turn Naomi's own row house, the place she had built her life, into the most dangerous place she could be? When people talk about Baltimore, they often mention the crab cakes, the row houses with marble steps, or the Sunday crowds in purple jerseys filling M&T Bank Stadium. But for me, Baltimore isn't just a city, it's the story of my whole life. Every brick, every corner, every smell of Old Bay seasoning carries a piece of who I am. I was born here, in a working-to-class black family on the West Side. My parents never had much money, but they taught me discipline, faith, and pride. My mother worked double shifts as a nurse's aide. My father fixed cars out of our driveway. They believed in hard work and in looking out for each other. Those values stuck with me for 30 years. I worked for the United States Postal Service, rain, snow, heat, whatever the weather. I showed up. I worked my way from sorting mail in the back to becoming a supervisor at the central facility. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me a pension, a sense of stability, and a roof over my head. That roof is a narrow red brick row house in Federal Hill. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, or at least, I thought it was. 3 floors, creaky wooden stairs, a little garden patch out front where I grow geraniums and collard greens in the summer. On Sundays, I polish the brass door knocker until it shines. That house holds my laughter, my tears, my late husband's voice echoing through the hall. When Harold, my husband, died of a heart attack 10 years ago, I thought my world was ending. He'd been my rock since we met at Morgan State University. He was the one who convinced me to buy the row house instead of renting forever. After the funeral, the house felt hollow. Too many rooms, too much silence. That's when my nephew Darren moved in. Darren isn't my blood son, but I raised him after my sister passed. He was 15 at the time. Wild-eyed and grieving, I cooked his dinners, drove him to football practice, stayed up late helping him with algebra. I even co-assigned his first car loan when he turned 20. In my heart, he became my child. Now he's 33. Tall like his father, but with my sister's warm smile. He's had a string of job sales, construction, security guard, but nothing that seemed to stick. Lately, he's been between opportunities, as he puts it. I cover more bills than I probably should, but family sacrifices, right? Then there's Kara, his wife. She's 30, pretty, always perfectly styled for her social media posts. She runs a home lifestyle channel, online recipes, cleaning hacks, motivational quotes. On the surface, she's sweet, calling me mom sometimes, baking me pound cake on my birthday. But there's a calculation behind her eyes. The way she asks questions about my pension, the way she once joked that retirement homes these days are like resorts. And then there's their little boy, Jordan. He's 6. All energy and giggles, running toy trucks across my polished hardwood floors. He calls me Grandma Nay. When he throws his arms around me, I forget my worries for a moment. Still, Living under one roof with 3 generations has its strains. I sometimes feel more like a bank account than a person. Groceries disappear faster than I can buy them. Utility bills climb, and whenever I suggest cutting back, Kara smiles and says, "Don't worry, you've got your pension." Right outside my family, I have one person I trust without hesitation, Zora Bennett. Zora and I met at choir rehearsal 20 years ago. She owns a natural hair salon a few blocks over. Women come from all across the city. For her hands, she knows how to twist locks, braid, and care for hair with love. But more than that, she's the sister I never had. We've shared midnight phone calls, hospital waiting rooms, and Sunday dinners. When Harold died, she sat with me every evening for a week, just so I wouldn't eat alone. Zora knows the rhythms of our neighborhood, to the block parties, the church anniversaries, the corner gossip. She has a sharp instinct about people, more than once. She's warned me when someone seemed a little too interested in my business. My other anchor is my church, Mount Olive Baptist. Every Sunday, I put on my choir robe, stand in the alto section, and sing my heart out. Amazing grace has carried me through more dark nights than I can count. The congregation has seen me through grief, through joy, through the lonely years of widowhood. In many ways, my life is woven from these threads: my row house, my church, my best friend, and my family under my roof. It should feel secure. It should feel safe. But ever since Dr. Klein slipped that note into my purse, everything feels different. I keep looking back over conversations, gestures, little details I brushed off before, like how Darren got defensive when I asked why the electric bill was higher than usual, or how Kara once asked casually if I had updated my will lately, or the time I found a change of address form tucked into the mail pile, already filled out with my name and Darren's handwriting. He said it was a mistake, just practice. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to. Now, with Dr. Klein's warning echoing in my ears, I can't stop asking myself, were those signs, were they trying to set something in motion right under my nose that night as I sat in Zora's kitchen sipping sweet tea? I almost told her about the note, but the words got stuck in my throat. How do you even begin to explain that your doctor told you not to go home, that your own family might be the danger? I stirred the tea slowly. Watching the lemon slice spin, Zora chattered about the choir Christmas program, but I barely heard her. My mind kept circling back to one question. What exactly was waiting for me back in that row house, and why? After 64 years of living by faith and family, was I suddenly afraid of the very people who called me Mom and Grandma Cliffhanger? Naomi's roots seem steady: family, church, home, but tiny cracks are starting to show. What new signs will confirm whether her fears are real or just shadows of her imagination? When you've lived in the same house for decades, you know its rhythms, the way the pipes rattle when the shower runs upstairs, the faint creak on the 3rd stair from the bottom, the smell of the hardwood floors when the sun heats them in summer. A house tells on itself, and it also tells on the people living inside it. After Dr. Klein's note, I started noticing things that didn't fit the rhythm. Small things at first, so small that I might have dismissed them if I wasn't already on edge, but now they stood out like neon signs. The first was the scent. I came home from choir rehearsal on a Wednesday evening, still humming a gospel tune under my breath. The moment I stepped inside, the air hit me thick, perfumed, unfamiliar. It wasn't the warm vanilla Kara usually filled the house with for her online cozy home videos. This was sharper, exotic, like sandalwood laced with white gardenia. I froze in the entryway. I hadn't worn perfume in years. My blood pressure meds make me sensitive to strong scents. "Kara," I called out. She popped her head out from the kitchen, phone in hand. Her lipstick was perfect, even though it was just after dinner time. "Yes, Mom." "What's that smell?" "Oh, just a new room spray I'm testing for my channel." She smiled, but her eyes flicked sideways, as if rehearsing the line. "Do you like it?" I forced a smile and nodded, but later, when I peeked into the cabinet where she kept her sprays and candles, there was nothing new. The second clue came a few days later. My mornings are routine oatmeal, black coffee, then my pills, blood pressure, calcium, and vitamin D. I keep them in a 7-a-day pill organizer. Neat and simple, but that morning, when I opened the Tuesday slot, the vitamin D capsule was missing. The prescription pills were still there, but the soft gel was gone. I frowned. Had I taken it and forgotten maybe? But when I checked Wednesday's slot, it also had only the prescription pills. The vitamins were missing. Darren. I asked casually over breakfast, "Did Jordan get into my pill box?" He looked up from his phone, half to chewing toast. "What? No." He knows better. "You probably forgot you took them." His tone was dismissive, final, like the conversation wasn't worth having. But I know myself. I can forget where I put my reading glasses, but I don't forget my pills. Then there was the mail. One afternoon, I sifted through the stack of envelopes on the counter bills, flyers, a church newsletter when I spotted it, a letter from the United States Postal Service. Bold print across the top read, "Change of address. Confirmation." My name was printed clearly, Naomi Ellison, and below it, a P.O. box I had never heard of. My stomach dropped. I hadn't filed any change of address. "Darren," I called, holding it up. "What is this?" He walked in, grabbed the letter from my hand before I could finish reading. Oh, that I was just helping a friend move. Filled out a sample form. Must have got mixed in. No big deal. No big deal, I repeated softly. But he was already tossing the envelope into the recycling bin. By then, I was wide awake to every detail. Kara's phone calls at night, always hushed. Once I caught her whispering. Yes, the house is appraised over $500,000. The location alone worth every penny. The moment she saw me, she plastered on a smile and asked if I wanted tea. The way Darren closed his laptop the second I walked into the room, the stack of envelopes he whisked away before I could glance at them, red letters flashing past due before the flap disappeared into his jacket pocket, even little Jordan added to my unease. One night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "Daddy says soon we'll get a new house with a yard. Will you live there too?" "Grandma, nay." I forced a laugh, kissed his forehead, and turned off the lamp. But inside, I felt my world tilt. Darren hadn't mentioned moving. Why was my grandson talking about a new house? I tried to brush it off, telling myself maybe Darren was daydreaming. But the truth nagged me. None of these signs made sense if everything was normal. And then, the final straw. On a chilly Saturday morning, I came downstairs earlier than usual. The house was quiet. I moved carefully so the stairs wouldn't creak. As I passed the living room, I froze. Kara was sitting at the coffee table, papers spread out in front of her. She didn't see me in the shadows. I watched as she slid one document under a magazine when Darren walked in, whispering, "She can't find out yet." My pulse thundered in my ears. That she was me? I backed away silently, heart pounding. That night, alone in the kitchen, I spread everything I had collected, the crumpled change of address letter I dug out of the recycling bin, my tampered pill organizer, Dr. Klein's warning note. I whispered to myself, "Naomi, are you imagining things, or are they really planning something?" The refrigerator hummed in the silence. I stared at the papers, hands trembling, and remembered Dr. Klein's words. Family isn't always what it seems. I wanted so badly to dismiss it all, to chalk it up to paranoia, but too many pieces were piling up, too many cracks in the rhythm of my home. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping the floor. I needed proof, real proof, because if I was right, if Darren and Kara were plotting something against me, I couldn't just sit quietly and wait. The question was, how far had they already gone cliffhanger? Naomi has gathered suspicious signs, but suspicion isn't enough. The next step is undeniable evidence. And what she's about to find will change everything. Suspicion is like fog, you can't quite grab it, but it blurs everything. Evidence, though, is different. Evidence is solid. It slaps you across the face, leaving no room for excuses. And the day I stumbled across my first real piece of evidence, I realized my life was about to split into a before and an after. It started innocently enough. I came home early from Bible study on a Tuesday afternoon. The house was quiet, too quiet. No music from Kara's kitchen speaker. No sound of Darren's TV shows in the living room. Even little Jordan wasn't thumping his toy trucks along the hallway. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt unease. I carried my tote bag upstairs, thinking maybe I'd grab a cup of tea. But when I passed the den, the room where I kept my old oak filing cabinet, I noticed the door was slightly open. I always kept it closed. Always. Something tugged at me. I pushed the door open, heart tapping faster. The cabinet looked the same from the outside, but when I opened the top drawer, my stomach dropped. My folders weren't in my order anymore. I'm old-fashioned. I label everything neatly in black ink: house deed, pension, life insurance, medical records. But now, house deed was shoved toward the back, papers bent at the edges, as if someone had handled them with careless hands. I pulled the folder out. On top of the official deed was a document I had never seen in my life, a durable power of attorney draft. My eyes scanned the page, and my chest tightened. My name was typed across the top as the principal, the one granting power, and in the signature line. There was my name, except it wasn't mine. The letters were crooked, too stiff, like someone had copied it from a check or traced it from an old form. Whoever forged it thought I wouldn't notice. But I noticed. I'd been signing my name the same way since 1969 when I got my first driver's license. That signature wasn't mine. And the kicker at the bottom, under notary, was the printed name of Loretta Miles. Loretta was Kara's mother, a mobile notary who'd stamped plenty of neighborhood papers. We'd even baked pies together for church fundraisers. My stomach churned. Why was her name on a document that would hand over every right I had to someone else? I sat back in the chair, gripping the paper until my knuckles ached. Then I noticed something else. In a small stack of mail on the desk, mail that should have been on the kitchen counter, was an envelope with bold blue letters: Hale Cognitive and Memory Clinic. My breath caught. I tore it open. Appointment, confirmation, capacity, evaluation. Patient Naomi Ellison, date Tuesday, 10:00 a.m. Capacity evaluation. My head swam. That's the test they give to determine if someone's mentally competent to live independently. I hadn't scheduled that. I hadn't even heard of that clinic. But someone had used my name, my date of birth, my Medicare information. The words blurred. If that test went through, and if someone pushed the right doctor hard enough, one stroke of a pen could declare me incapacitated. That forged power of attorney would suddenly carry teeth. They could sell my house, drain my accounts, stick me in some nursing facility without so much as asking me, and the worst part, to outsiders, it would look like they were protecting me. My hands shook as I stuffed the letter back in the envelope. I thought that was enough shock for one day, but the final blow came when I checked my phone later that night, months earlier. At the urging of a guest speaker at church, a lawyer who specialized in elder law, I'd signed up for free credit monitoring. Protect yourself, he'd warned the congregation. Financial abuse is the fastest growing crime against seniors. That night, a notification blinked on my phone. New credit inquiry detected. I hadn't applied for anything. I clicked through, and the details made my blood run cold. Someone had tried to open a line of credit in my name, using my social security number. I sat frozen in my bed, clutching the phone. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't me imagining things the way Darren sometimes hinted. This was fraud. This was my identity being stolen right out from under me. I gathered everything: the forged document, the clinic letter, the credit alert, and slipped them into a canvas tote bag. I shoved the bag deep into the back of my closet, beneath my winter coats. My heart pounded as I shut the door. When Darren came home later, whistling casually, I forced myself to smile at him from the kitchen table. Kara breezed in with a takeout bag. chirping about Thai food on the surface. It was an ordinary evening, but I felt like I was sitting across from strangers. At dinner, Kara mentioned casually, "Mom, don't you think it'd be nice to live somewhere with more care, like one of those senior communities? They have pools, activities, even medical staff on site." Her tone was light, sing-song, but her eyes didn't meet mine. I pushed a piece of broccoli around my plate. "I like my home," I said firmly. "Oh, of course," she said quickly, flashing a too bright smile. "Just an idea." Darren changed the subject to a football game. But I wasn't listening. My mind was racing with everything I had uncovered. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. My chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof. And proof meant one thing: my son and his wife were trying to erase me. I closed my eyes and whispered into the dark, "Lord, give me wisdom, because I can't stay blind another minute." Cliffhanger. Naomi now has undeniable evidence documents, forged signatures, fraudulent credit activity, and a scheduled memory test she never agreed to. But just how far does this conspiracy go, and can she stop it before it's too late? Once you see proof, there's no going back. You can't unknow a forged signature. You can't unread a letter scheduling you for a memory test you never asked for. From that moment forward, every glance, every word, every smile from Darren and Kara felt loaded with hidden meaning. And so, I began to watch. I didn't let on. I cooked dinner, folded laundry, even watched Wheel of Fortune with Darren like nothing had changed. But inside, I was alert, my ears tuned for whispers. My eyes traced every paper they touched. My heart beat harder at every unexplained phone call. The first escalation came the following Saturday. Kara had taken Jordan to soccer practice, and Darren was in the garage. I was dusting the living room when his phone buzzed on the counter. I know better than to snoop, but something in me, call it survival, made me glance. The text lit up the screen. "From unknown number. Once the evaluation is signed, you'll have full authority. We just need her cooperation at the appointment." I nearly dropped the duster. My throat went dry. They were already coordinating with someone. A lawyer. A doctor. The idea of strangers waiting for me to show up to an appointment like a lamb to slaughter made my stomach twist. I quickly snapped a photo of the message with my old flip phone. It wasn't much, but it was something. That night, after everyone went to bed, I tiptoed into the kitchen and pulled out the small digital recorder I used back when I sang solos in choir. It was dusty, but it worked. I tucked it in a ceramic cookie jar on the counter, the one shaped like a black cat that Kara hated. I left it on, its red light hidden by the lid. For 2 days, I let it run. When I finally listened back, my heart cracked and hardened all at once. Kara's voice, sharp as glass. She's stubborn. But once the doctor says she's unfit, she won't have a choice. Darren's replied, lower, resigned. "We just have to keep her calm until then. If she gets suspicious, it'll be harder." Then, a pause. Kara again, whispering. "Do you think she knows about the accounts, if she ever told someone about the investments?" The recording went fuzzy, but my pulse hammered. Investments. They didn't know about the accounts Harold had left me overseas. Thank God I'd never told them. Still, hearing my son, my flesh and blood, speak of me like I was an obstacle to be managed lit a fire inside me. The more I listened, the more I realized their act of loving family was cracking. Kara's tone was often impatient, her words dripping with entitlement. Darren sounded tired, desperate, and together. They spoke of me not as a person, but as a hurdle. The fog had burned off. I could see the storm now, and it was barreling toward me. But God didn't raise me to crumble. My mama worked double shifts as a nurse's aide, raised 4 kids on grit and cornbread. Harold, my late husband, taught me how to balance books, how to ask hard questions, how to never sign anything without reading it twice. Their strength flowed in me now. So I decided if they were watching me, I'd watch them harder. I started small. I asked Darren casual questions about his new job prospects. He fumbled, his stories never lining up. One day he was interviewing with a construction company, the next, with an accounting firm. He never had paperwork to show, no emails, no schedules. Meanwhile, Kara was constantly on her laptop, once. While she fetched coffee, I glimpsed her screen. A real estate listing glowed bright luxury homes to gated communities. She was scrolling through kitchens bigger than my entire downstairs, bedrooms with chandeliers, pools sparkling under Florida sun, and every so often, I'd catch her murmuring into her phone, "Yes, we'll have funds soon. No, trust me, it's handled." Funds. From where? From me. The tension in the house grew thicker each day. Jordan, sweet boy that he is, began to sense it one evening as I tucked him in. He whispered, "Grandma Nay, why does Mommy say you're forgetful? You always remember my bedtime stories." My chest ached. They were already planting seeds, even in his little mind, baby, I said softly, brushing his curls back. "Don't you ever doubt it. Grandma's mind is just fine." But inside, I wanted to scream. By the second week, my tote bag of evidence was growing: the forged POA, the clinic letter, the photo of Darren's text, the recordings. Still, I knew it wasn't enough. Courts demand airtight cases, not suspicions and scraps, so I made a decision that scared me to my bones. I called the number of a lawyer whose card I'd kept from church, the same elder law attorney who had warned us to guard against financial abuse. His name was Mr. Randall Pierce. I left a message. "This is Naomi Ellison. I think my family is trying to have me declared incompetent. I need advice." I hung up before I could chicken out. That night, at dinner, Kara looked me straight in the eye and said, "Don't forget your doctor's appointment next Tuesday." "Mom, I'll drive you." I forced my fork to my mouth, though my appetite had vanished. "What appointment?" I asked evenly. She blinked, then pasted on a smile. "Oh, just a routine check. Nothing major." Her lie was silk, but her hands trembled slightly as she set down her glass. That was when I knew. They were ready to set the trap. And if I wasn't careful, I'd be walking straight into it. Cliffhanger. Naomi has recordings, documents, and proof that her family is conspiring against her, but Kara has just reminded her of the doctor's appointment that could seal her fate. Will Naomi walk into the evaluation or find a way to turn the tables first? The morning of that so-called routine appointment crept up faster than I wanted. By then, my tote bag of evidence was nearly bursting papers, recordings, even a notebook where I scribbled every odd word and glance from Darren and Kara. Still, it felt like pebbles against a tidal wave. Kara knocked on my door just after breakfast, her smile too sweet, her perfume too strong. "Ready?" "Mom, I'll drive you." "It won't take long." I forced a nod. "Of course." "Let me grab my purse." What she didn't know was that tucked in my purse, behind a packet of tissues, was the digital recorder fully charged. If they wanted me at that appointment, I'd have a record of every word. The clinic was sleek, almost too sleek. Modern art prints on the walls. A receptionist with a voice like butter. "Mrs. Mato Ellison, right this way. Dr. Harris will see you shortly." Dr. Harris, not Dr. Klein, not my doctor of 30 years who'd known Harold, who'd delivered Darren. No, this was someone new, someone Kara had picked. Inside the office, the man rose to greet me, mid-40s, expensive suit under his white coat, his handshake firm, but his eyes flickered to Kara before settling on me. "So, Mrs. Ellison," he began, flipping through a folder. "We'll just do a simple evaluation today, memory questions. Problem solving, nothing to worry about." My pulse raced. He already had a folder on me, information I hadn't given. As we started, I played along. He asked me to remember 3 words: apple, table, penny. He asked me to draw a clock showing 10 past 11. He asked me the name of the president. I answered each one carefully. Clearly, I wasn't going to give him any excuse to scribble confused in his notes. But halfway through, as he looked down at his folder, something caught my eye. The top page wasn't just blank evaluation forms, it was a report already typed out. At the top, in bold, patient shows signs of early cognitive decline. Recommend guardianship and oversight of financial affairs. I froze. The words were already there before I even finished the test. My throat tightened. This wasn't an evaluation. It was a performance. Staged to rubber stamp what had already been decided, and at the bottom of the page, under prepared by, was a name I hadn't expected. Darren Ellison. My own son had prepared the report. Shock slammed into me like a wave. My knees wobbled, my hand tightening on the armrest. They hadn't just set up this appointment, they had written the ending before the play even began. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my face calm. If Dr. Harris noticed my clenched jaw, he didn't say anything. When the evaluation wrapped up, Kara leaned in, her hand brushing my arm. See? Mom easy. Dr. Harris will just send us the results. Nothing to worry about. But my ears buzzed with the words I'd seen recommend guardianship. In the car ride home, Kara hummed along to the radio, tapping her manicured nails on the wheel. I stared out the window, clutching my purse where the recorder sat, still running, that night. I replayed the recording in my bedroom. Dr. Harris's questions, my clear answers, Kara's cheerful voice, and faintly, in the shuffle of papers, the sound of him sliding that pre-written report back into the folder. Proof. I thought that was the revelation, that my son had betrayed me, that this was all staged. But the deeper cut came the next day. When I pulled my notebook from the tote to add details, a slip of paper fluttered out, one I hadn't seen before. It was a photocopy of a new will. At the top, last will and testament of Naomi Ellison. At the bottom, my forged signature again. And in the middle, every asset, every possession, every dime left, not to Darren alone, not to family in general, but to Kara, not my son, my daughter-in-law. I sat in stunned silence, the paper trembling in my hands. Kara wasn't just helping Darren. She was orchestrating. She had positioned herself as the sole beneficiary, the woman who posted cozy recipes online, who called me mom in public, who smiled so wide for Christmas photos she was the one pulling strings behind Darren's back. Suddenly, so many moments made sense. Her late-night phone calls, her obsession with real estate listings, her whispered, "We'll have funds soon." This wasn't just Darren's desperation. This was Kara's ambition. And the cruelest twist, Darren, my only child, was letting her lead him like a dog on a leash. I pressed the paper flat, tears burning my eyes. My whole life, I had believed love sacrificial. Motherly love would be enough to protect me. But love wasn't armor, not against greed, not against betrayal. And now, for the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting to protect myself. I was fighting to protect Harold's memory, the life we'd built, the years of sweat and sacrifice. This wasn't about paranoia anymore. It was about survival. I tucked the paper back into my tote, hands trembling, but resolve hardening. I would not let them bury me alive in paperwork, not while I still had breath. Cliffhanger. Naomi has uncovered her first devastating revelation. The evaluation was pre-written, and a forged will leaves everything to Kara. But if Kara is the true mastermind, just how far has she already gone, and who else might be involved? When I discovered that forged will, my hands shook so badly I had to sit down on the edge of my bed. A will leaving everything to Kara, not even Darren, my own son. That wasn't just greed, that was calculation. And it meant Kara had been weaving this web far longer than I realized. But it wasn't until the following week that the full horror revealed itself. Mr. Pierce, the elder law attorney I had called, finally returned my message. His voice on the phone was calm, steady. "Mrs. Ellison, I'd like you to come to my office. Bring anything you found, and, if possible, don't come alone." I arranged to meet him the next afternoon, but before I left, I wanted one more piece of proof. That night, I left my recorder running again, this time hidden behind a stack of cookbooks in the kitchen. I prayed for courage and went to bed. The next morning, when I retrieved the recorder, I almost couldn't press play. But I did, and what I heard shattered what little faith I had left. Kara's voice, low and urgent. We need to push the timeline. If Naomi keeps snooping, she'll find out. I can't risk her moving money again. My breath caught. Moving money, Darren's voice followed, weary. You promised me this was simple. A will, the house, some savings. Now you're talking about offshore accounts. I didn't even know she had those offshore accounts. My secret. The inheritance Harold had left, tucked safely away, never mentioned to Darren. Somehow, Kara knew. Kara hissed back. Because I did the digging, she's not as clueless as she pretends. There are millions we could access if we play this right, but if she talks to anyone, lawyers, banks, it's over. Millions. She knew. She had found traces I'd carefully hidden for decades. And then Darren, quieter, almost broken Kara. I'm in over my head. Those people I owe, they're not patient. If we don't get the money soon, he stopped. The silence hung heavy before Kara snapped. Then you'd better grow a backbone. Darren, because this isn't just about debts anymore. This is about the life we deserve. I dropped the recorder on the table, my breath coming in shallow gasps. It wasn't just greed for comfort. It was desperation mixed with ambition. Darren's gambling debts, Kara's hunger for luxury, together. They'd built a plan to strip me bare and bury me under forged diagnoses and fake wills to make it all look legal. The sheer coldness of it made me tremble. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were trying to erase me alive. I gathered everything: the recorder, the forged will, the clinic letter, the fake power of attorney. I stuffed them into my tote and headed for Mr. Pierce's office. His building was in downtown Raleigh, an old brick converted into law offices. Inside. His space was warm but professional, shelves lined with thick legal books. He looked up as I walked in, his dark eyes kind but sharp. Mrs. Ellison, he said, standing to shake my hand. You did the right thing calling me. I poured out everything the note from Dr. signed, Dr. Klein, the tampered pill organizer, the forged documents, the staged evaluation, the recordings. Mr. Pierce listened without interrupting, his pen moving across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. This is worse than I expected, he said gravely. What your son and daughter-in-law are doing isn't just elder abuse. It's fraud, forgery, conspiracy. And if Kara has already attempted to move assets tied to your late husband's accounts, that may cross into federal territory. My head swam. Federal. He nodded. Cross-border accounts are under strict scrutiny. If they've accessed or even attempted to access them using your identity, the FBI would have jurisdiction. I clutched the tote tighter. I had thought this was a family betrayal, ugly but private. Now it sounded like a crime syndicate case. Mr. Pierce leaned forward. Mrs. Ellison, I want you to understand something. They've underestimated you. They think you're isolated, vulnerable. But you have truth on your side. And if we play this correctly, we won't just stop them, we'll expose them. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of strength. But that strength nearly buckled when he asked me to hand over the recordings. I hesitated, fingers trembling on the device. It was like passing over pieces of my broken heart. He met my eyes firmly. If you want justice, we need evidence, and you, Mrs. Ellison, have built a case stronger than most lawyers ever see. I nodded slowly, sliding the recorder across the desk. Before I left, he gave me one more warning. Be careful. Don't confront them yet. Let them think you're still in the dark. The more they reveal, the stronger our case. I promised him I would, but fate had other plans. That evening, when I returned home, Kara was waiting in the kitchen, her arms crossed. Long day, Mom, she asked lightly, but her eyes were cold. Where were you? I forced a smile. Just out. Errands. Her lips curved in a practiced smile. Funny. Because Darren said he saw your car downtown near some law offices. My blood ran cold. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You're not planning to make trouble for us, are you? Because that wouldn't be good for anyone. Especially you. Her words slid over me like ice. I smiled faintly, pretending confusion. Trouble. Oh, Kara, I just went to pick up some church documents. She studied me, her gaze sharp as a blade. Finally. She laughed softly. Of course. Church. You're such a good woman. But as she turned away, I caught the flicker in her expression. Suspicion, calculation, she knew. And if I wasn't careful, the trap would snap shut before I could spring my own cliffhanger. Naomi has uncovered the full scale of the conspiracy, Darren's gambling debts, Kara's hunger for millions, and federal crimes. She's taken evidence to a lawyer, but Kara already suspects she's fighting back. The stage is set for a battle of wits, one that Naomi can't afford to lose. The night Kara cornered me in the kitchen, her smile sharp as a knife. I barely slept. Her voice replayed in my head like a broken record. You're not planning to make trouble for us, are you? Because that wouldn't be good for anyone. If there had been even a sliver of doubt left in me, it was gone. Kara wasn't guessing any more, she knew. And that meant my window for preparation was narrowing fast. By morning, my fear had hardened into resolve. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to strike back with brains. Not brawn. Step 1, strengthen my case. The next day, I called Mr. Pierce from my car, parked a few blocks from the house. She suspects something, I whispered. What do I do? His calm voice steadied me. Then we move faster. I'll file a petition for protective supervision immediately. It'll show the court you're aware of attempts at abuse and taking proactive steps. Meanwhile, keep gathering anything that proves their intent. Intent, I repeated softly. Yes, that was the key. Courts don't convict on suspicion. They convict on intent and action. That afternoon, when Kara left for her content shoot and Darren dozed in front of the TV, I slipped into their home office. Papers were stacked carelessly on the desk. My heart pounded as I sifted through them, praying for one more thread. I found it. A printout of an email from Darren's account to a mortgage broker. Subject line urgent. Need to leverage property value ASAP. Attached were scanned copies of my deed and insurance policy. I snapped photos with my flip phone, then tucked everything back neatly. Step 2, build allies. I knew better than to fight alone. That evening, I called Zora, my lifelong friend from church, under the guise of needing a ride to choir practice. Once we were safely in her car, I told her everything. Her hand flew to her chest. Naomi, Lord have mercy, you should have told me sooner. I couldn't prove it before, I said softly. Now I can, But I need witnesses. People who know I'm sound of mind, that I'm not what they're trying to paint me as. Zora didn't hesitate. I'll gather folks. Half the church would stand up for you. Reverend Lewis, too. You just say the word. I squeezed her hand, tears stinging my eyes. For the first time, I didn't feel so alone. Step 3, set the trap. Mr. Pierce had one more suggestion. Sometimes, the best evidence is letting them incriminate themselves in real time. Would you be willing to stage a conversation? My stomach tightened. You mean, pretend to play along? Exactly. If they believe you're still in the dark, they'll reveal more. And if we record it, it could be the nail in the coffin. It terrified me, but I knew he was right. So I planned it, that Sunday afternoon. I waited until Darren was restless, pacing the living room while Kara scrolled through her phone. I walked in slowly, my posture hunched, my voice softer than usual. I was thinking, I began, hesitating just enough to sound unsure. Maybe you're right. Maybe I do need more care. This house is big for me. Hard to manage. Kara's head snapped up. Her eyes gleamed. Oh, Mom, I'm so glad you see that. It really would be best for you. Darren exhaled, relief flooding his face. I forced a tremor into my voice. But What about the details I wouldn't want to be a burden? Kara leaned forward, lowering her voice into what she probably thought was comforting. Don't worry about that. Once the paperwork is finalized, we'll take care of everything. You'll be settled in a nice community. No stress, no bills. All we need is for you to sign a few things. Easy. My recorder, hidden in my pocket, captured every syllable. I tilted my head, pretending confusion. Paperwork. Like what Darren rubbed the back of his neck. Just documents that make it easier, so we can manage the house. Your accounts. Pay your expenses. Nothing for you to worry about. And the will, Kara added smoothly. It's just a formality, Mom. To make sure everything stays in the family. My pulse thundered, but I kept my face calm. I see. Well, maybe you can show me those papers tomorrow. Kara's smile widened. Triumphant. Of course, we'll have them ready. Inside. I wanted to scream, but outside. I smiled faintly, the picture of tired acceptance. Step 4. Secure the net the next morning. I drove straight to Mr. Pierce's office with the recorder in my purse. He listened to the playback, his jaw tightening. This, he said firmly, is gold, clear intent, clear coercion. With this, the forged documents, and your witnesses, we can move to block any action they take. And if they push forward, he glanced up at me, eyes sharp, they'll hang themselves. He outlined the next steps, filing an injunction to freeze any property transfers, notifying the bank of suspected fraud, and alerting the state's Adult Protective Services unit. Each move was like laying bricks in a fortress around me, and for the first time, I felt the balance of power shift. That evening, back at home. Kara slid a manila envelope across the table. Here, Mom, just look these over. Tomorrow we can go to the notary. I kept my hand steady as I slid the envelope into my lap. Thank you, dear. I'll read them tonight. She smiled, satisfied. You're doing the right thing. But as soon as I reached my bedroom, I pulled the papers out and photographed every page. Another forged will, another power of attorney, each signature line waiting for me to give away my life. I placed the envelope neatly back in the kitchen drawer. Let them think I was compliant. Let them think they'd won. Because tomorrow, those very papers would be in the hands of law enforcement. Cliffhanger, Naomi has staged a false surrender, capturing her family on tape and securing the forged documents. But as she prepares to deliver everything to the authorities, a shocking twist awaits one final betrayal that will push her to the ultimate revenge. The morning I chose to act. The sky was gray and heavy with rain. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. For weeks, I had been trapped in fear, but now I walked with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I was ready. The bank trap. Darren and Kara insisted on driving me to the bank. Kara dressed as if she were going to Sunday service, hair pressed, pearls at her throat. Darren kept rehearsing under his breath. She's not well. We're just trying to help. I nodded quietly, playing my part. My hands rested on the envelope of forged documents Kara had slipped me. She thought I'd sign them today. She thought victory was already hers. When we entered the bank, Mrs. Delgado, the branch manager, greeted us warmly, but I could see the sharp awareness in her eyes. Mr. Pierce had already briefed her. Darren leaned forward first. We're here to update my mother's accounts. She's not able to manage them anymore, so we have the paperwork ready. Kara slid the envelope across the desk with a polished smile. Power of attorney. The will. Everything's in order. Mrs. Delgado looked at me directly. Mrs. Ellison, is that what you want? I made my voice waver. Yes, I suppose so. Darren exhaled. Kara reached for my hand, squeezing like she was sealing the deal. That's when Mrs. Delgado pressed a discreet button under the counter. Two men in suits entered within moments. One introduced himself as an investigator from the district attorney's office, the other from Adult Protective Services. The air shifted. Kara's smile faltered. Darren stammered. What is this? And I placed my recorder on the desk. I pressed play. Kara's voice poured out. Once the paperwork is finalized, we'll take care of everything. You'll be settled in a nice community. No stress. All we need is for you to sign a few things. Then Darren. She won't suspect anything if we keep her calm. The investigators exchange looks. Mrs. Delgado folded her arms. The silence was suffocating except for Kara and Darren's own words betraying them. Kara snapped, her voice sharp with panic. This is taken out of context. She's been confused for months. She doesn't know what she's doing, I cut her off, my voice steady as steel. Confused. Confused enough to photograph every forged document you gave me. Confused enough to record every word of your plan. No, Kara, I'm not the one confused. You are confused enough to believe I'd never fight back. The investigators seized the envelope. One flipped through the fake will and the power of attorney. Blatant forgery, he muttered, shaking his head. Darren buried his face in his hands. Kara's lipstick smile cracked into fury. The dominoes fall by that evening. The sheriff's department had served Darren and Kara with legal notices. Their bank accounts were frozen. Any attempt to touch my property was blocked. Mr. Pierce filed for emergency protection over my estate. Word spread faster than fire in dry grass. Neighbors who used to wave politely now whispered in disbelief. Did you hear Naomi's son tried to steal her house? At church. Friends squeezed my hands with sympathy but also respect. No one looked at me with pity anymore. But my true satisfaction came that night at the dinner table. Darren sat hollow-eyed, silent. Kara slammed her fork against her plate. You think this is over? You humiliated us in public? Do you know what people are saying? I met her glare without flinching. The truth. They're saying the truth. She leaned across the table, venom in her voice. You'll regret this. I let out a small laugh. Quiet but sharp. No, Kara. For the first time in months, I don't regret a thing. The courtroom 2 weeks later. We stood in front of a judge. The courthouse buzzed with reporters. My story had spread beyond Raleigh. I wore my best navy suit, pearls shining under the lights. Kara tried to play the devoted daughter-in-law. Darren mumbled excuses, his lawyer insisting they were only trying to ensure Naomi's care. But the evidence crushed them. The forged documents, the credit fraud, the recordings, every detail laid bare. When the judge declared the will and power of attorney fraudulent and permanently stripped Darren and Kara of any claim to my estate, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. And when the gavel came down recommending criminal charges for fraud and elder abuse, Kara's face blanched, her jaw slack. I didn't smile. Victory wasn't about gloating. It was about survival, about reclaiming what they had tried to erase. As I walked out of court, cameras flashing, a reporter called out Mrs. Ellison. Do you have a statement? I paused, looked directly at the lens, and said, never underestimate a woman who knows her worth. Age is not weakness. It is strength. The sweetest revenge that night. Alone in my room, I allowed myself one small smile. They had wanted to write me out of my own life. Instead, I had written them out of mine. Kara had built her image around influence and perfection. Now, her name was splashed across headlines with words like fraud and forgery. Darren, my son, who thought he could control me, was now shackled by his own debts and charges. And me, I wasn't the fragile woman they painted. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refused to be silenced. But just when I thought the storm had passed, Mr. Pierce called me into his office. His tone was grave. There's one more thing, he said gently. During the investigation, we discovered Darren's gambling debts are tied to dangerous people, loan sharks. If they can't collect from him, they might look to you. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, even in victory. Another shadow loomed. I walked out of his office, the weight of it pressing on me. For a moment, I wondered if the fight would ever truly be over. But then I lifted my head, squared my shoulders. I had survived betrayal from the people closest to me. Whatever storm came next, I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't running anymore. Cliffhanger. Naomi has won her revenge in court and destroyed Darren and Kara's scheme. But Darren's hidden debts now threaten to drag her into a new storm. Will this final twist undo her hard-won freedom or prove her strength once again? The weeks after the trial felt strangely quiet. For the first time in months, I wasn't waking up in fear, waiting for the next betrayal. The silence was healing, but also unsettling. My house, once filled with Kara's perfume and Darren's heavy footsteps, was now just mine again. At first, I didn't know what to do with that freedom. I wandered room to room, dusting shelves, straightening cushions, as if order could fill the emptiness. But then I remembered Dr. Klein's trembling hand, the note that had saved me. Don't go home. Run. I hadn't run. I had fought, and I had won. Rebuilding with Mr. Pierce's guidance. I put safeguards in place. All my accounts were locked with new protections. My will was rewritten, airtight, unforgeable. I even created a living trust, ensuring that if anything happened to me, my assets would go directly where I wanted them. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to Adult Protective Services, not as a victim, but as an ally. If this could happen to me, I told them, it can happen to anyone. I want to help. Within weeks, I was volunteering, speaking at community centers, sharing my story with older women who whispered their own fears to me afterward, women who admitted their children pressured them, their relatives tried to trick them, their so-called caregivers isolated them. Every time I told my story, I felt stronger. The shame I once carried had turned into fuel, a new bond. One afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, Olivia stood there, my granddaughter, eyes swollen, hands trembling. She looked nothing like the smug girl who once dismissed me at the dinner table. "Grandma," she whispered, "can we talk?" I hesitated, remembering every cruel word she had spoken, every cold glance. But then I saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear I had once felt. We sat at the kitchen table. She confessed everything, how Kara had manipulated her, how Darren's debts had bled into her life too. She admitted she'd known more than she told me, and that guilt had eaten her alive. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said through tears, "but I don't want to end up like them. Please, can I learn from you?" I studied her carefully. She wasn't the same girl. Betrayal had hardened her, but maybe it could also shape her into something better. "Olivia," I said gently, "forgiveness isn't a gift I hand out freely anymore. But redemption, that's something you can earn. If you're willing to work, to face the truth, I'll help you." Her shoulders shook with sobs. "I will, I promise. For the first time in a long time." I felt a flicker of hope, the last loose thread. Even as my life steadied, Darren's debts hovered like a storm cloud. Loan sharks don't disappear just because a judge signs papers. Mr. Pierce warned me again. Stay vigilant. They might come knocking. One evening, I returned from church to find an envelope taped to my front door. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Your son owes us. If he can't pay, we'll collect elsewhere." My hands shook. But instead of fear, a new resolve filled me. I wasn't going to let his mistakes chain me again. The next morning, I walked into the sheriff's office and handed over the note. "I will not be intimidated," I said firmly. "If they want me, they'll have to do it in the light of the law." The sheriff, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes, nodded. "We've been tracking this group. With your cooperation, we may finally have enough to bring them down." And just like that, Darren's last betrayal became another chance for me to stand tall, not as prey, but as proof that no one is too old, too vulnerable, or too weak to fight back. The message. 6 months later, I moved into a smaller house with a garden. I planted roses, hydrangeas, and a patch of lavender by the porch. Every morning, I sipped coffee under the sunrise, breathing air that finally felt like mine again. Olivia visited often. She was back in school, working part-time, saving money, sometimes. I caught her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite name, something between regret and admiration. One evening, as we planted bulbs in the soil, she asked softly, "Grandma, do you ever regret adopting Dad?" I paused, trowel in hand. "No, I said finally. I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it. But I don't regret loving. Because love, real love, is never wasted. It teaches us, even when it breaks us. She nodded slowly, her eyes brimming. And I realized then empowerment wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, about choosing not to let betrayal define me. Twist of justice months later, I received word Darren and Kara had both accepted plea deals. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse. They couldn't fight the mountain of evidence. Kara wept in court, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. Darren stood hollow-eyed. Sentenced to years, he couldn't gamble his way out of. When the news reached me, I didn't cheer, I didn't gloat. I simply whispered to myself, justice. But here's the twist no one expected, least of all, me. The FBI, who had been monitoring the loan shark operation, discovered Darren had been secretly cooperating with them in exchange for information. He had hoped for leniency. So while Kara rotted in state prison, Darren's fate shifted. His sentence was reduced, but under federal supervision, far away from Raleigh. And with that revelation came the final sting. My son had betrayed not only me, but Kara too. He had sold her out to save himself. The closing note today, at 68 years old, I am freer than I have ever been. My story has been shared in local newspapers, on radio shows, even online forums where strangers write. Naomi gives me hope. She reminds me it's never too late to fight back. I've created a small foundation for elder justice, using some of my savings. I speak at senior centers, reminding women like me, your voice is your power. Don't let anyone silence it. At night, when I sit on my porch with the scent of lavender drifting through the air, I thank God for 3 things: for Dr. Steve Klein, whose note saved me, for my own courage, which I had forgotten but never lost, and for the truth that even endings can be beginnings if you dare to write them yourself. Final twist for debate. As for Darren, the last letter I received from him came from a federal facility. He begged me to visit, said he wanted a second chance. I never opened the envelope, but sometimes, late at night, I wonder, did he cooperate to save himself, or did he do it, in some twisted way, to protect me one last time? That question remains unanswered, and maybe that's how it should be, because some doors, once closed, should never be opened again. End message. Family is not defined by blood, but by loyalty. True strength is not in what you endure, but in when you finally decide you deserve more. Your turn. If you were Naomi, would you forgive Olivia and rebuild with her, or close that chapter for good? Tell me in the comments your perspective might give another woman courage tonight. If this story touched you, tap like and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. For more cinematic life dramas filled with family secrets, smart revenge, and healing journeys, subscribe to Voice of Neva and ring the bell so you never miss a chapter. We bring you new 60 to 75-minute stories every week. Thank you for watching, for feeling, for thinking.
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.